So this is Canto 4 of the Paradiso. And Dante, I think I may have read some of this passage to you in other episodes when I was talking about the relationship between the senses and reality and some of the quantum physics stuff we've gotten into. But it bears revisiting because I think we are now entering into the kind of answer that we're going to get to this question, right? What is love? How do I deal with all of my fleshly desires? Not just my sexual desires in point of fact, but my, appetites and my senses and so forth. He asks about whether these are people that actually that actually sort of occupy this physical space that he's looking at. And it's a similar question to the one he asks Statius. He's like, these guys don't have bodies. How do they feel pain? Now he says, are the angels really here? Like, if I flew up in a spaceship, he wouldn't have asked it that way, but if I flew in a spaceship, would they be there? She says, they showed themselves to you here, not because this is their sphere, but as a sign for you that in the Empyrean their place is lowest. Such signs are suited to your mind, since from the senses only can it apprehend what then becomes fit for the intellect. And this is why the Bible condescends to human powers, assigning feet and hands to God, but meaning something else instead. And Gabriel and Michael and the angel who healed the eyes of Tobit are portrayed by Holy Church with human visages. That which Timaeus said in reasoning of souls does not describe what you have seen, since it would seem that as he speaks, he thinks. He says the soul returns to that same star from which, so he believes, it had been taken when nature sent that soul as formed body. But his opinion is perhaps to be taken in other guise than his words speak, intending something not to be derided. If to these spheres he wanted to attribute honor and blame for what they influence, perhaps his arrow reaches something true. This principle, ill understood, misled almost all of the world once, so that Jove and Mercury and Mars gave names to stars. The other doubt that agitates you is less poisonous for its insidiousness is not such as to lead you far from me. To mortal eyes our justice seems unjust. That this is so should serve as evidence for faith, not heresy's depravity. But that your intellect may penetrate more carefully into your other query, I shall, as you desire, explain it clearly. So just to pause here, right? She said to him, the Bible condescends to human powers, assigning hands and feet to God, but meaning something else instead. And the Timaeus too, Plato's Timaeus, which is another kind of cosmology. In fact, it's very similar in some ways to this cosmology, not in every way, but this notion that the spheres have a kind of music, that they are realms of honor and ascending and descending honor, right? As you go higher up in heaven, of course, you get to greater and greater virtues, greater and greater beatitude. At the moon, you have inconstancy, right? People who were inconstant but still virtuous, right? This is why the moon sort of changes its form and so forth. So it's all, as I said, a place for everything in its place, but not in the kind of literalizing physical sense that we might attribute to Dante. We are very apt, I think, when we read medieval texts to think, oh, those backwards primitives, they thought Sky Daddy was in the sky. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, their approach to this issue is much subtler and in some ways truer than our approach, which is like, well, if it's not on a chart or on an MRI scan somewhere, it can't be real, right? That is only real which can be measured. No, says Beatrice. Your intellect as the capstone of a physical soul, right, of a soul that inhabits a physical body, or so let's say an embodied soul, right, can only be accessed through matter. That's the being that you are. But the thing that you are accessing is not matter. And so sometimes it's necessary for scripture and for angels and for other beings, God perhaps even, to speak to you in images, right? To manifest himself, to incarnate himself even, in such a way that your fleshly mode of perception can lead you up. You can go through that perception up to the higher thing that is not in itself perceptible, and yet governs the motions and the rightness of, or wrongness of any embodied being, right? So this is the Platonic ladder Christianized. And the Platonic ladder says to us, yeah, your eros points you with this great physical passion in this way, but now we are learning, right, that because of that inflection point between logos and flesh, right, between spirit really and flesh, because of that inflection point, it is possible for the logos to draw the rest of the soul and even the physical person up toward itself. In some ways, if you think about Paul's spirit and flesh, right, he's not talking, I don't think, in a platonically dualist way about like body and soul. He's saying body and soul are intertwined, and the sarx, the flesh, is what happens when the body draws the soul down to its level, but the spirit is the pneuma is what happens when the soul draws the body up to its level and operates according to its logic. And so that's where we're headed in Paradiso. This is the kind of final answer in Beatrice to the problem that began with Beatrice for Dante, which is how can I live in my body? How can I live in the world without becoming my body or becoming subject to these pagan, physical, fleshy powers?